In 2012, we were graced with the gift that keeps on giving, which we now have come to know and love today as Guildwars 2. The folks at ArenaNet have sent us back to the mystical land of Tyria a whopping 250 years after the events of Guild Wars Nightfall. And with that, the world has drastically changed from Guild Wars. For returning players, the game is loaded with nostalgia for a game long past. But why would anyone think Guild Wars 2 is the greatest MMORPG ever? Well, let's have a look. Opening the game, we are greeted with character customization and allowing you to not only create your character, but also choose your own backstory depending on the race and class you decide to play. The original launch game of Guild Wars 2 offered you the following races to select from. Asura. Think of these guys like a highly intelligent and advanced technical race, where maths is their religion. Humans. Well, like you and me, but humans living in the realm of Tyria. And Char, giant cat-like beasts with horns, also very industrious and can be separated into 3 factions, Blood, Ash and Iron. If you ever played the original Guild Wars, this is the race that laid siege to the human city of Ascalon, which you had to escape at the very start of the game. Sylvari. These guys are kind of like elves but born from trees, specifically the Pale Tree, and are very attuned with the world around them. And Norn. Like humans on steroids, Norn hail from the north and are hardy people, not dissimilar from Vikings. They live for the great hunt. Once you've chosen your race and given yourself a unique look and feel, you can then determine which class you are going to align yourself with in order to play the game, which will determine your style of play. Your options include the Warrior, fairly standard amongst MMO games, the Mesmer, much like a mage or illusionist, a Ranger, a Hunter class, Thief, which is comparable to that of a Rogue, the Necromancer, again fairly standard amongst MMOs, a Guardian, very similar to a Templar or a Paladin, the Engineer, so this one's a little bit unique to Guild Wars 2. An Engineer is similar to that of a Warlock, but instead of summoning minions, it uses turrets and trip mines and devices. The Elementalist, much like a mage blended with a priest, but with the benefit of being able to tap into all of the elements and switch between these as you play. Once you have made your decision, you'll get a cinematic of all your choices made initially to compose your purpose in the game and solidify the backstory that you have chosen to set up in the world.
We exceed expectations in everything we do.
What you'll notice right away is just how jaw-droppingly stunning this game looks in comparison to its rivals at this point in time. But also, if you look at the bottom of the screen, you'll notice that the user interface is vastly different to that from the traditional MMORPG games, which are available. There is a lot less clutter and a lot less options to choose from when in a combat scenario, and this might deter some people right away, but before you judge, hear me out. Standard traversal in the game is the W, A, S and D keys, and your mouse to control your movement. Spacebar is jump, and if you hold down the left and right mouse buttons, this allows you to auto run while moving your mouse to control your direction of travel. The way Guild Wars 2 is meant to be played is actually by enjoying the world you are thrown into. Experience its beauty and actually enjoying the combat as opposed to sitting there watching your cooldown timers all around your screen to tell you that this skill is now cooled down over the 40 plus tiles you have available for you to use. The developers kept a clutterless approach in mind and built a combat with a less is more mindset. So really, depending on your class, you have 5 weapon skills and 1 ultimate skills. However, you can change weapons on the fly during combat, which allows you to add all sorts of flavors to your combat style to give you a truly fluid combat experience. For example, on my Warrior, I run a heavy melee longsword and a ranged weapon, and what this allows me to do is charge in and pop all my skills and build up some awesome damage, and when all the skills are on a cooldown, I'll get out of there quick smart and switch to my ranged weapon and able to unleash all the skills from that weapon until they then reach their cooldown timers. Once that's happened, I've got the ability to switch back to my melee weapon and rush right back on into the fray. Now, in dungeon instance, or when you're grouped with others to bring down a larger enemy, this playstyle is invaluable as it allows you to keep consistent damage while enjoying the battle itself. What combat also offers you is the ability to actively dodge. By double tapping one of the movement keys, you will effectively dodge in that direction. But be careful, as you can only do this twice in quick succession before you need to let this build back up again. You can always keep track of this by reviewing the yellowish half circle right above your health. This is your dodge stamina indicator. So, in a lengthy boss fight, it's good to know your timings when using the dodge functionality in the game.
Watch this.
So, while we are on the interface bar, the big red ball in the center of the screen is your health and overall health points. It's pretty self-explanatory, I know, but it's worth pointing out. Now, to the right we have the heal and the class skills. So these skills are abilities which will work in conjunction with your current class, which can act as support or buff yourself and allies or debuff enemies. With the final ability on the right hand side being an ultimate ability, which is both support action and in many cases an attack to be stacked with regular attacks. And if you have the added expansions, you can also summon mounts. Now, mounts do give the game a new perspective to play from, but really it's totally not needed. While Guildwars 2 has a huge map size, it's made easily traversed by waypoints which allow you to warp to specific locations on the map in different areas. All you need to do to warp is just ensure that you're not in combat, have enough copper to travel from one to the other. When you first start out, you'll be instanced into a starting area, which will allow you to get to grips with the controller and basic navigation around the world, completing a storyline quest, which will then let you loose into the game where you are free to explore. Now, it's worth noting here that everything in Guild Wars 2 gives you XP. The game wants you to level up, and will ensure that you do by any means it can. Visit points of interest, have some XP. Visit waypoints, have some more XP. Completed a talent quest, have some XP. And my absolute favourite, vistas. Some of these are trickier to get than others, but give you a mini cinematic of the area that you're exploring, and if you really like what you see, press the print screen button on your keyboard to snag a screenshot, which makes for an amazing desktop background. Now, each race has its own main city, which is what you as the player will first be drawn to as you complete your quest line to get into the story of the game. Here, you can interact with different merchants as well as explore instance areas of the map. Each race main city is beautifully constructed and has much to offer in terms of sightseeing, and is a really easy way to get some XP as there is no wildlife threats in main cities. The main city for all races lies in the heart of the map called Lion's Arch, and returning players will know that Lion's Arch is the central hub for all of Tyria. Now, 250 years is a long time, and if you have a keen eye, you can spot the ruins and remnants of the original Lion's Arch from the first Guild Wars. Now, the game offers the usual professions, which are nothing new to MMORPG games, meaning you can harvest and farm materials and then use these for crafting weapons, armor, jewels, and food. There is nothing that Guild Wars has done here which sets it apart from the others, with the expectation that it lets you experiment and stack your resources together. As you go through the game and either get new weapons or armor drops or simply craft them yourself, you can transmute these items into your favourite armor pieces if you don't like the style of armor. In addition to this, you can also change the colours of your armor to really cement your own style as you play through the game.
Fueled like fire! So start melting, ladies, because the boy is hotter than hot. He's hot.
Now, the whole story arc of the game is that you're a citizen of Tyria with the backstory that you designed, and as fate would have it, while you follow your quest line, is that a series of events is occurring which leads you to the knowledge that the Elder Dragons are returning to Tyria, and the first has presented himself, the Dragon of Undeath, Zaitan. He has risen the lost continent of Ore from below the depths of the ocean and is leading an army of undead upon Tyria, which then leads you into partnering with the Sylvari, who is going to lead the charge against the dragon. Without going into too much detail, the game is loaded with cinematics and talking as opposed to reading to get all your information in relation to quests and what's happening in the world around you, which again really allows you to immerse yourself into the game. The real treat of Guild Wars 2 is that it is meant to be played with friends and auto-scales you from the level you are in. For example, you can see me cruising around with my low level character just playing the game, and here's my wife's max level character who is being scaled back to the area I am in to ensure that the XP that she receives is relevant to her while she is in the area with me. Of course, when you are max level, XP really doesn't mean too much unless you're using the mastery system, which happens to be in one of the expansions. But I can play through my story instances, and my wife is able to come along with me on these adventures and act as support and literally play through my story with me, which gives more veteran players the ability to relive the story without having to start over again. As you progress through the world, you'll stumble into areas known as jumping puzzles, which are little mini games in the main game, which is designed to break you away from the normal gameplay and let you enjoy the traversal element throughout Tyria by letting you access to some hard to reach places, but in doing so give you some truly stunning visuals, and a reward chest is waiting for you when you get to the end. Now, like any good MMORPG, there are dungeons and raids to be completed in Guild Wars 2, which will drop better gear and give you currency to spend at the dungeon specific shop to get you some amazing weapons. But Guild Wars also introduces a new group task system called Fractals of the Mists, which, if you're heavily into the lore of Guild Wars, it takes you through some of the most amazing historic battles that ever took place in the series, like the fall of Ascalon at the start of the original game. Additionally, there is a PvP element in Guild Wars 2, which refers to the Mists as a PvP ground, which pits you against different players in waves of PvP combat. Or, there is my personal favourite in PvP, a mode called World v World v World, where 3 server populations combat against each other for territory and supply line control to capture landmarks, keeps and the main castle. It's an epically sized game of defend and attack, ensuring that your own supply line is intact to reinforce your captured landmarks while attacking the opposing 2 servers to ensure that they aren't able to make headway. This mode allows you to build rams, catapults and trebuchets to attack and breach into enemy territory and capture key points to lock down supply lines and ensure dominance. But be on your guard, the tide can turn in the blink of an eye. There are also massive boss fights which happen out in the world called world events, which indicate that a mega boss is coming out to play. These events draw a hell of a crowd and can take over half an hour to bring down, even with the most robust players on the field. But everyone does their part as long as you're there and taking part in the fight. If you're there, you're helping.
Hooray! I'm useful! I'm having a wonderful time!
Now, Guild Wars 2 can be as complex or as simple as you want it to be in terms of gearing and skilling your character as you unlock skill points. You can keep it as basic or dive deep into really complex statistics to get the competitive edge on whatever you desire. It's really up to you. If you're not a numbers person and don't want to dive that deep, no need to worry. You can stay at surface level and still really have a good time with the game. Now let's review what we are effectively being given. Stunning visuals, fluid, fun and immersive combat, an epic, engaging story where you feel like you're involved in the game, massive map for exploration, and everything the game is literally trying to level you up. And it's built to be played with others. And the best part of all, you can get the core game for the low price of free.
I'd buy that for $1.
If you really enjoy what you've experienced, you can continue the story by purchasing the expansions, and there are 3 available so far with the Heart of Thorns, Path of Fire and End of Dragons, and the 4th, which is set to be launched later in August, called Secrets of the Obscure. It's also worth noting that when you get to the endgame of the expansions, the folks at ArenaNet give you what's called the living story to keep you moving through episodes of story which are gradually released through time, which typically act as a story precursor for the events of the next expansion to come. With all this in mind, it's hard for me to point out something I don't like about this game. However, one thing I will point out is if you are an avid World of Warcraft player, it does take a little bit of getting used to because there aren't as many buttons for skills to push, so it's a little bit more of an adjustment. But with all this in mind, it's hard for me to find a game that even comes close to Guild Wars 2 and what it brings to the table as a game. It's an experience you just have to sink your teeth into to really understand what I'm talking about. So if you're a fan of MMORPG games and you haven't given this a go yet, what the hell are you waiting for? I'll see you in Tyria.